Welcome back. All right, so straight off the top, my mouth is still frozen from going to the dentist this morning, so I'm doing this video idea that I've had for the last few days. I'm going to do this now. I wish the freezing was gone too. So, the number one draft pick in the National Hockey League is very likely to be Gavin McKenna. And I'm saying very likely because there are reports that maybe he ends up going second, and we'll get into why. But what isn't up for debate in this draft is that there are some very, very good players in it. And so there's definitely a reason to want to tank for this one. Now, Nashville's the first team on the board because they got the lowest amount of points. 16 points, a record of 6-12-4. If the draft lottery was today, Nashville would have a 25.5% chance at it. So that's pretty good. In terms of forwards, and I got these grades from the Hockey News. The Hockey News went through and graded the depth of an organization, not just in the NHL, but in terms of prospects and just in between. That's a pretty good indicator. So Nashville, they give a C+ for forwards, C+ for defensemen, and B for goaltenders. So not too bad in terms of organizational depth. Their last playoffs, of course, was 2024. Missed the playoffs this past season spectacularly. And I came up with a core four for every team. The core four for me with Nashville, and I say for me because people can disagree with me, that's fine. Forsberg, Josi, Saros, and I've got O'Reilly there. Now, O'Reilly may very well end up being on the move this year, but I've still got O'Reilly there. And the reality is that we may see O'Reilly on the move before the season's done. Isn't that right, Shadow? Yeah, right, Kitty. So I look at Nashville and I see a team that's good. I see a team that's got some really good players. They're not great. And they're not really trending in that direction right now. They could use a number one draft pick. They absolutely could. So Nashville, if they win the draft lottery, I don't think very many people would get upset by it. And I think it could be huge for their future. Calgary, 8-13-3, 19 points in 24 games. This team's not interested in the number one draft pick. They've won 3 games in a row at the time I'm recording this. They have a 13.5% chance of drafting first, according to Tankathon. Forwards, C-. Defense, B+ or C+. Goaltenders, B-. So that forward group being a C-, yeah, this is a team that desperately needs a top forward. So what's interesting is, if we go down here for a moment, let's just say Keaton Verhoff is the number one pick. It's taken by Nashville. And he's a defenseman. So Nashville loves defensemen. Calgary would, I think, sprint to the podium if we still did drafts that way and draft Gavin McKenna. I can't see how they wouldn't. Then that would leave the Canucks. Canucks currently are third on the list. 9-12-2. Stop laughing, Canuck fans. 20 points in 23 games and 11.5% chance of winning the draft lottery. Stop laughing. Vancouver doesn't win draft lotteries. They are the Detroit Red Wings of Vancouver Canuck draft lotteries. Forwards, Vancouver's given a C+. Again, this is by the Hockey News. Defense, a B. Goaltenders, a B. The last playoffs for the Vancouver Canucks, 2024. So 2024. Calgary here, 2022. I think Calgary really wants that number one draft pick. Vancouver, I don't know. So their core, and I went with 4 guys for the core here too. Pettersson, Besser, Demko, and Hughes. All long-term members of the Vancouver Canucks. The debate about who the problem is and who needs to go, the reality is there's a lot of blame to go around in Vancouver. I think it starts at the top. I think the guys in the locker room are part of it as well. And I think the biggest mistake this team made was believing going into the summer that minor differences, minor changes could make a major difference in the team's ability to make it to the playoffs. One thing that throws me in, we often see this where somebody will say, well, my team's dealing with a lot of penalties, or not penalties, injuries. So when those injuries are done and the players come back, then we're going to be a lot better. It doesn't necessarily work that way. Sometimes it does, but sometimes it just doesn't. And so if a team has a really bad year in the midst of the playoffs and somebody says, hey, they had a bad year, but they were missing these 2 key guys, so they're going to make the playoffs this year, I think the odds are about 50-50 as to whether or not you're right. I don't have the numbers to back that up. That could definitely be a video at some point in time, but there's always that chance. And then in order to say, well, we're going to get the guys back and be healthy, well, now everybody else has to stay healthy as well. It's remarkable watching some of these teams that they get somebody back in that same game, somebody else goes down. So St. Louis, 23 games, 7-10-6 record, 20 points for them. They do have more regulation wins than do the Vancouver Canucks. So they have a 9.5% chance of drafting first overall. Their forward group given a B-, their defense a B, and their goaltending a B-. They lost in the first round against Winnipeg. So you go back to the top prospects. If Verhoff is seen as the number one prospect when we get to June, St. Louis takes him if they have that number one draft pick. I don't see any situation where the St. Louis Blues, as long as they don't trade that draft pick or haven't traded that draft pick, I'm pretty sure they haven't. That'd be crazy coming off the year they had last year to trade a first-round draft pick in 2026. But Verhoff would be an excellent pickup for them. They have a good defense, but if you add a top-notch, top-flight defenseman there, who knows what they might be able to do in the future, right? They could use a forward too, sure, but I'm leaning towards the defenseman if he's ranked number one. Their core, tough, because we know that they're going to move players, but I went with Thomas, Kyrou, Binnington, and Parayko. And I don't think any of those four get moved, unless this season becomes a complete and total unmitigated disaster, which it could. It could. Keep a happy thought. Toronto. 22 games, 9-10-3 record, 21 points, 8.5% chance of drafting first, and enraging 31 fan bases if they do. Toronto would love to draft first. They do not enjoy going through this process of being bad. They do not enjoy being below the playoff line and all the media and all the fan speculation. But if you give Toronto that number one draft pick in 2026, they didn't trade it, did they? Oh, they did. So Toronto's in this odd position where they really could use a top prospect. They could win a draft lottery, get a top prospect. But then that makes things a little bit more dodgy going forward, doesn't it? So their forwards are given a B. Their defense is given a B+. Their goaltender's a B-. And I can't find any fault in any of that logic. They lost round 2, of course, this past spring against Florida. They lost that in 7. So as a lot of Leaf fans said, hey, we gave them the toughest time. And I understand that sentiment, I do, but it does not mean that that's going to translate into results the following season. As frustrating as that is, once that series ends, nothing carries over into the next season. Nothing carries over into the next playoff round either. The core four for the Toronto Maple Leafs, I'm going with almost 5, like 4.25. So Matthews, Tavares, Nylander, and Riley, they've been here for a long, long time. That's the core 4. But Nyes is the next one. So when one of these core 4 gets traded or leaves, whatever happens, then Nyes becomes that core 4 member for the Toronto Maple Leafs. It is interesting how many teams you can come up with a core 4 of guys who've been together for a long time. In an era where it's been the case that teams are less likely to make moves, I think stagnation takes place. I think in some cases it's just stagnant. It's just same thing, same every game. And so I've talked about that, how there was more liberal trading back in the 80s. Guys were getting moved all the time. And there is the argument of, well, that throws off chemistry. It also gives players a chance to turn it around. They view players not playing well in St. Louis, and they get traded to the Islanders, and they do really well. The Islanders in that same trade send somebody to St. Louis who needed a change of scenery, and that works as well. I miss trades like that. That's the kind of trade that I miss, and I miss that trade being in season, because you see a team that's just a complete disaster, and then all of a sudden, it becomes pretty obvious that things are going to get better after the new guy arrives, right? Buffalo, 22 games, 9-9-4 record, so 22 points. They have a 7.5% chance of drafting first. Their forwards are a C. Their defense a B-. Their goaltending a C. The last time they made the playoffs was 2011. 2011. I want this to be the year. I want it to happen. But core 4 for Buffalo, I went with Tage Thompson, Alex Tuch, Rasmus Dahlin, and I included Luukkonen in that core 4. I didn't include Owen Power. I don't think that Owen Power is ahead of Dahlin on that list. And there could come a point where they say we've got to make a big change, and maybe Owen Power's name's out there. Bowen Byram's name has been out there for years. But I think if they really wanted to make a big change, that's where Owen Power would get them that big change. And teams would call. Owen Power, former first-round draft pick, still relatively young. Teams would definitely call and see if he's available. So Buffalo's an interesting one, and we'll get into which teams I think most need prospects. The Rangers, 24 games, 11-11-2, 24 points. They have a 6.5% chance of drafting first. Their forwards ranked C+, their defense is C+. Their goaltenders, bailing them out, an A- for the goaltenders. The last playoffs for the Rangers, 2024. That's part of the reason why we were expecting to jump back up and bounce back into the playoffs, and they have not. There's still plenty of time, of course, but they haven't to this point. So looking at their core four, I went with JT Miller, Vinny Trocheck, I went with Fox, and I went with Shesterkin. I didn't go with Panarin because he's a pending unrestricted free agent. And I don't know that I would bump any of those four players out right now for Panarin. Trocheck's been there for a while. Fox he's a Ranger. And Shesterkin is a Ranger. Miller's the one that you might be able to pull out of the core four, but he's the captain. So he's kind of got to be there for that reason and for just how much attention he brings on top of that as well. Not every team's captain is in the core four, but it's definitely worthy of note. So as I mentioned, Gavin McKenna, a left winger, 5'11", playing out of Penn State. The reason I have a Penn State magnet, I got this just for Gavin McKenna. That's it. I have a whole set of Penn State magnets. I may never use them again. I don't know what the Penn State, New York Giant, and Jacksonville Jaguar magnets are going to do together, but I'll figure something out. Now, Gavin McKenna is still an excellent forward, and he's putting up very good point totals in the NCAA. Last I looked, he's above a point per game. Being above a point per game in the NCAA in your NHL draft year is insane. Absolutely insane. The fact he's 5'11" might be something to keep an eye on. I know. For those of us who are hockey fans, we're going to point out any number of players who have smaller stature, players who are around 6 feet tall, and they're very good. But in the National Hockey League, there is a certain amount of coveting of 6'4" and taller players. And this is where I introduced Keaton Verhoff. Keaton Verhoff could be the number one draft pick. 6'4", he's a defenseman, and he plays like a vet. So from what I've seen with Verhoff, he is a big defenseman who plays that physical side a little bit, very good on the puck, can play 20-plus minutes per game. Tell me a team that doesn't need that kind of defenseman, and good luck getting that kind of defenseman in a trade. One of the reasons that defensemen go early, and we see these guys go to teams that already have defensemen, is because you can't trade for them. Once they've been drafted, that's it. You can't trade for them. And if you can, you're going to give up a pretty penny for them. So, Verhoff could very well be number one. Ivar Stenberg. He's 5'11". He's listed as a left winger as well. Don't be too fooled by the fact these guys are all listed as wingers, because very often the young players, if they're playing against men, will end up getting moved to the wing. Much like rookies when they come into the NHL, who are listed as centers, start their career on the wing. Learn your job on the wing. The wing's easier to play than playing down the middle. There's less responsibility. And then later on, they can transition to center. Maybe they need to work on their face-offs. Maybe they need to work on their awareness on the ice, right? But whatever it is, once they've got that figured out, then they're playing in the middle. So seeing them listed as left wingers when they're prospects, whether it's NCAA, whether it's out of the European League or playing out of the CHL, I always assume these guys could play center later, because it does happen pretty often. Now, Stenberg's 5'11". So there's the issue, is that if you are looking at Verhoff and saying he's a big defenseman, he's who we need, the 1 and 3, if McKenna and Stenberg end up being 1 and 3 or we're both undersized, well, comparatively speaking with what you're looking at, Verhoff's your man. Now, Stenberg has already shown strong play in the SHL against men, and that turns heads. That might be enough to have certain scouts saying, you know what, don't worry about the fact he's not 6'5", he's not 6'8". This guy can play. And so Stenberg, by all accounts, is going to be a very good forward. And then there's Ethan Belchitz. I wanted to make sure I said that well, especially with the lisp I got going on right now. I had to be really, really careful with that one. He's 6'5". He's a left winger as well. So there are two things that anytime a draft rolls around that are obvious. Height matters. There's always tall guys that end up going earlier in the draft than we think they were supposed to. And centers. So if Ethan ends up being a center by the end of the year, that'll improve his draft stock right away. Guarantee right away we'd say, you know what? Maybe this Ethan kid, he's got it made. So we'll see. He wins board battles. He's 6'5". I would imagine a lot of that involves just picking players up and moving them out of the way. And he's got quick hands. He's considered to be a good offensively minded player. He wins good board battles. He's 6'5". Power forward? Could he be another power forward in the NHL? It's possible. And power forwards are coveted in the National Hockey League. Nashville. If Nashville doesn't take a defenseman in Verhoff, might Nashville go a little bit off the board if, say, that's 1, 2, 3, 4 in the rankings and go with Belchitz and say, we're going to go with this guy. 6'5". He wins board battles. He's got good hands. He's got good offensive instincts. Where's the risk, right? With McKenna, the risk seems to be the puck, off puck and defensive play that's a concern. That's why suddenly the number one Gavin McKenna, he might still be number one, but there's a chance. There's a chance that it's somebody else that gets that number one in June when draft day rolls around. For the Flames, so let's just say it goes in this order. Nashville, if the draft was today, they draft McKenna. If Verhoff continues to have this remarkably strong run, Verhoff's going to be tough to pass up on. And whoever doesn't take McKenna would then go second to the Flames. So Calgary fans doing a little dance. Keep in mind, I didn't do the actual draft lottery. Vancouver, if they're third, they get Keaton Verhoff or Ivan Stenberg. It's probably going to be Stenberg, isn't it? You know what? I will say with the way that Vancouver's been drafting recently, Belchitz would be their pick. And then that would leave Stenberg to go to St. Louis at 4. Because the top 4 draft picks, by today's standings and even by points percentage, they're all in the West. So it is a fascinating time in the National Hockey League. And seeing some of these teams in the running for a number one draft pick wasn't on my bingo card. The Rangers, no. Toronto, no. St. Louis, no. And then Vancouver, I'm surprised Vancouver's as low as they are. And yet, as a ghoul, I honestly think it's the best thing that can happen for the team, for the franchise, for the future. Because for years now it's been, well, we're close. We add a second line center. Ta-da, we're playoffs. And you're not. And the thing is, I have said for years, that's not going to do it. They don't listen to me. I'm just yelling it from my room here. Nobody can hear me. But that's not going to do it. There needs to be real, actual major change. And if Quinn Hughes doesn't have any interest in sticking around for it, then that's okay. And that's something that other teams may have to deal with as well. We've heard Stamkos' name attached a lot to rumors around Nashville. He probably doesn't want to spend time in a rebuild, right? For Calgary, there's been a lot of talk about Kadri as well as Anderson. The interesting thing is I don't know that Kadri ends up going anywhere. Anderson, probably. He is a pending UFA, so I didn't put him in the core 4. St. Louis, I don't know with St. Louis. I'm still expecting St. Louis to go on a bit of a run here. I think we're going to see some sort of a run, and yeah, there's got to be something here. St. Louis, it would be a disaster if they end up drafting in the top 5. For Toronto, with the exit of Mitch Marner, and it's not just Marner. This is a team that has tried for years to find an identity. Their identity's always been middling. Sometimes they have the physicality, they have the skill as well. A lot of skill, light on physicality. A lot of physicality, a little bit light on skill. That's happened at times for Toronto. Not during a full season, but there have been stretches where they're a really physical team, but they don't put the puck in the net very well. One of the great lies is people saying, "Oh, Toronto's just soft. They don't hit." They do. They're not soft. They haven't been for years, but I get it. The negativity is thrown towards Matthews, Marner, Tavares, and Riley. Those are the 4 that people are talking about, not the rest of them. But at any rate, Toronto, I think, would love to have that number 1 draft pick. The problem is Toronto can't go into a rebuild. So Toronto's in this sticky situation where if they get that number 1 draft pick, great. And if they don't, well, you were in the running. But if they don't win the draft lottery, then they're in kind of more serious danger. Especially if they're drafting, say, 7th or 8th or somewhere in that region where you're probably not going to get a player of that kind of impact. And if they have that kind of impact, it won't be until years later, in all likelihood. So it is going to be a very interesting rest of the season. My argument, if I was going to say who needs the number 1 draft pick the most, who needs that number 1 guy, Nashville is the team. I think Nashville's the team. I think that they could absolutely use that. I think the Flames, I'd have them at number 2. I think the Flames could use that pick. And then of the remaining teams, do I just go with Vancouver? I'm going to say Toronto. I think Toronto needs an infusion of really good young skill. Yeah. So I would say Toronto. Imagine Verhoff on their blue line. That would solve a lot of problems. So, yeah, I'll go that far. All right. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Hit like and subscribe in the event you may not have done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support. It's greatly appreciated. I will talk to you again soon.